There are many of us who have given the prophetic word. This is the season of Esther. It's time for Esther to arise. Queen, arise. Take your rightful position. The coronation. You're called to the kingdom for such a time as this. People love to hear it in theory until you get ready to rise, until they see you actually take the seat that God has ordained for you to take. When you demonstrate that thing and people begin to really see that this is actually what God has called you to do or to be, people are threatened by the demonstration, by the illustration. Whether you started the business, started the ministry, you are in position and in place where God has called you to be for such a time as this. People don't like that illustration. So what they'll do is the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the hypocrites, the judgmental people, they will all get together and gather in their little clickety clan cliques and things of that nature and have a whole conversation about you being in position. But when you are in position that God has called you to, you cannot allow for your focus to be broken by worrying about what somebody else says or thinks about how you demonstrate what God has called you to do. First of all, you're a trailblazer. When you are a trailblazer, you are carving paths. You are bulldozing your way into new territory and things of that nature. So things that you are creating, people don't always understand what you're creating or why you're creating it, but you do. And what you see, everybody don't see, and everybody's not going to understand. But it doesn't mean that you take your crown off or you move from your position that God has put you in. We represent the kingdom of God. Jesus is King of Kings. Him being King of Kings, that means that he made us Lord Kings on the earth, Suzerain kings on the earth, where we are called to take dominion, to expand the kingdom. King Ahasuerus, King Xerxes, Ahasuerus, or however people pronounce it in Esther chapter 1. He expanded the kingdom as a king here on earth. God is always the great king and always have been and always will be. But we are kings under the king. So as women, we are queens. And being a queen is not about us having a king as a husband, but it's all about what we're called to do here on the earth under the King of Kings. So when people see you with a crown on your head and see you sitting on the throne, such as this illustration, this demonstration that you are watching or seeing in this picture, it does not mean that I think that I am high and mighty and things of that nature. No, I'm a boss. I take position and stand in my rightful place to whom God has called me to be unapologetically. So when you demonstrate building your business, building your ministry, being creative, whatever it is that God has called you to do, God has called you to expand the kingdom. And you are to be the best of the best of the best that has ever been in your position, no matter who has done it before. So when you take dominion and you are ruling in excellence and you have the glory of God, the power of God to rule and to reign on this earth, you do it boldly and confidently and not worrying about somebody else's opinion of what God has told you to do. So yes, it's time for Esther to rise. This is time for women to arise, whether you call yourself Queen Esther or not. Take your rightful seat. Take your rightful position. The King of Kings has crowned you to be king/queen on this earth. And it's time to be about the Father's business. All that pettiness of worrying about what somebody else thinks and you and your feelings about what somebody else says, that's none of your business what somebody else says. You are on assignment to be about the Father's business, to expand the kingdom. When Nehemiah got ready to rebuild the temple, he had to put weapons in one hand and the building tools in the other. And sometimes you have to do the same. You have to remember that the weapons of your warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God for the pulling down of strongholds. And that's also in your mind and allowing people to cause you to get in your feelings because they don't understand what God is calling you to do. You're a trailblazer. You are called to do it first. What you see right now, everybody don't see it, but they'll see it later on. Sometime a year, sometime 2 years later. But because you're called to build the thing now and they don't understand it, it doesn't mean that you stop and get distracted by what other people think or say. And for those who are prophetic and apostles, you automatically are able to see ahead of time. But so many of us, we are blinded by leaving our gifts only in a building instead of knowing that the gift giver lives on the inside of us. When we are called to build and called to create and called to innovate and be trailblazers and things of that nature, you are called to set the stage. You are called to go before the people and build what it is that God called for you to build, to prepare the ark, to prepare what God has placed in you. You know the dreams. You know the plans that God has for you, but you just don't see how you're going to get it done. I'm quite sure Noah didn't know how he was going to build that ark, but he knew that it was the assignment that God had for him to build. And no matter how long it took, he got it completed. He could not leave here until he finished building what God put in him to build. And the same way with you. Take your rightful place, take your rightful position, and build what God has called you to build. You should be building in this time. You should be creating. You should be reading. You should be learning. You should be feeding. You should be harnessing your skills and things of that nature to make sure that you are great and representing the kingdom in excellence to the glory of God. Everything points back to God. So when people see you seated on a throne, whether it's a throne in a picture or whether it's a throne in your position or the throne in your business, your ministry, or whatever, long as you know who you represent and you worship and respect and know where your power comes from, because greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. You don't give a hill of beans what nobody else says or think about what God has called you to do. Your assignment is your assignment. Paint the picture, but also make sure that you are living the life and being who God has called you to be, because you already are who God created you to be, whether people are able to see it or not. But when you really recognize who you are and you know your identity of who you are and what it is that you are called to do and who your Father truly is and that you are his son, you are unstoppable. You are untouchable in the thing that God has called you to do. And people don't like that. But when you were called to the kingdom for such a time as this, that means that the Father has work for you to do, to expand the kingdom, to be about his business. Be on guard and do what you're called to do. If you're not called to be a queen, but you're called to be a warrior, then you go get out there like Deborah and lead rock the battle and do what it is that you are called to do. But don't let nobody intimidate you and keep you in your feelings about what God has said to you. What God has said to you is personal between you and God. God will always confirm what he has told you to do. But even if he don't, and you know in your knower that you heard from God, then you build the ark. You do what God told you to do. And the people will come around and they will see that this was God. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. So rise up, Queen Esther. Stand before the king. Bow before him and allow him to crown you and put you in position. Take your seat, because you are called to the kingdom for such a time as this. Demonstrate, illustrate, be about the Father's business. Be blessed. This is the Queen Maker, prophetic and apostolic Queen Maker. Be blessed.